I sat in that ICU for 48 hours, holding my son's hand and begging God to spare him, completely unaware that I was holding the hand of the man plotting my murder. The only truth came from the stranger behind the blue privacy curtain, an elderly woman who grabbed my wrist with a terrifying bony grip and whispered, "Stay away from him while you still can." If you're watching this, do me a favor, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because what I'm about to tell you might just save your life. I thought she was senile, confused by the morphine, but she wasn't losing her mind. She was handing me the weapon I'd need to destroy my own son before he buried me. It started with a beep. Beep, 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 beep. The monitor was the only sound in the world. It was a steady, rhythmic march. It should have been comforting, but to me it sounded like a countdown. My phone lay silent in my lap. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten more than a vending machine cracker in 2 days. I just watched his chest rise and fall. It was mechanical, artificial. "Come on, Ty," I whispered into the cold air. "Don't leave me. Not yet." I looked at his face. It was bruised, purple and yellow around the eyes. He looked so much like he did when he was 10, falling out of the oak tree in the backyard. I remembered carrying him inside, his small arms wrapped around my neck. I could fix a scraped knee. I could fix a broken bike. I couldn't fix this. A soft rustle of fabric broke the silence. I froze. My eyes darted to the left. A thin, blue privacy curtain divided the room. When I arrived, the nurse said the other bed was empty. I had assumed I was alone with Tyler. I wasn't. A hand reached out from behind the blue fabric. It was pale, bony, and trembling like a leaf in the wind. The fingers gripped the edge of the curtain and pulled it back just an inch. An eye appeared in the gap. It was cloudy with age, framed by deep wrinkles, but it was wide with terror. I leaned forward, my heart skipping a beat. The air in the room suddenly felt colder, sharper. "Ma'am?" I whispered, not wanting to wake Tyler. "Do you need a nurse? Should I call someone?" She didn't blink. She didn't look at the machines or the door. She just stared at me, into me. It was a look of desperate clarity. Her finger curled, beckoning me closer. I stood up slowly. My knees popped loudly in the quiet room. I felt a strange hesitation, a heaviness in my gut that told me to sit back down. But I stepped toward the gap. As I leaned in, the smell hit me. It wasn't the hospital smell of bleach. It was old lavender and rubbing alcohol. It smelled like my grandmother's house, forgotten and dusty. "Stay away from him," she whispered. I pulled back, blinking. "Excuse me?" Her voice was a dry rattle, like dead leaves scraping together. "Stay away from him," she hissed, "while you still can." A chill crawled up my spine. I looked back at Tyler, sleeping peacefully under the white sheet. "That's my son," I said softly, a defensive edge entering my voice. "He was in an accident. A car crash." She shook her head frantically. The movement was jerky, unnatural. "I know who he is," she insisted, "and I know what I heard." "You're confused," I said gently. "The medication makes things fuzzy. You should rest." "I am not confused." She reached out with shocking speed and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was like cold iron. Her skin was dry as paper, but her strength was real. "He made a call," she rasped. Her eyes darted to Tyler's bed, then back to me. "Last night, when you were asleep in the chair, I tried to pull my arm away, but she held on," he whispered. She said, her voice dropping so low I had to strain to hear it. He said, "The old man is clueless. I'll have the deed soon." My blood ran cold. The words hung in the air. "The old man is clueless." You misheard," I stammered. "He's been unconscious. He hasn't woken up." "I didn't mishear," she said, tears filling her cloudy eyes. He said, "Make sure the insurance is ready." She released my wrist abruptly. I rubbed the spot where her fingers had been. It felt cold. "Trust your instincts, Bob," she whispered, "before it's too late." "My name." She knew my name. Before I could ask how, the door swung open. A nurse bustled in, bringing the noise of the hallway with her. "Mrs. Vance, time for your meds." The old woman pulled the curtain shut with a sharp snap. She vanished. I stood there, staring at the blue fabric. The old man is clueless. It wasn't possible. Tyler was my boy. He was impulsive, sure. He wasn't good with Mandir. but he loved me. He was just hurt. I sank back into my chair. I looked at Tyler. He looked so innocent, his face relaxed in sleep. But the silence in the room had changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy. The next morning, sunlight flooded the room, washing out the sterile light of the hospital. Tyler stirred. I sat up straight, my heart hammering. His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, groggily, they opened. He blinked against the harsh light. He looked around the room, confused. Before his eyes landed on me, "Dad?" The relief that washed over me was so strong I almost wept. The pressure in my chest, the fear I had carried for 2 days, finally broke. "I'm here, Ty," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm right here. You made it." He groaned, touching the bandage on his head. "Water," he croaked. I scrambled to pour a cup from the plastic pitcher. My hand shook slightly. I held the cup to his lips, supporting his head just like I did when he was a baby. He drank greedily, water spilling down his chin. He pulled back, gasping for air. He looked around the room again, scanning the corners. "Where's Jessica?" The question stung. It was a small thing, stupid really, but he hadn't said thanks for staying. He hadn't asked, "How are you?" Just, "Where is she?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She's on her way," I said. "I've been here for 2 days, Ty, since the ambulance brought you in." He didn't look at me. He was already reaching for the bedside table, fumbling for his phone. "Cool. Thanks, Dad. Cool." My son almost died. I had watched his heart monitor for 48 hours, terrified it would stop. And all I got was cool. He unlocked his phone, his thumb tapping furiously against the screen. The blue light illuminated his face. He wasn't looking at me. He was gone again, lost in the digital world. The door banged open. Jessica walked in, my daughter-in-law. She was wearing a sharp black suit that looked out of place in a hospital. Her sunglasses were perched on her head, holding back her blonde hair. Her heels clicked on the linoleum floor like gunfire. Click, click, click. She walked right past me. She didn't even turn her head. "Baby." She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his neck. I was so worried. Tyler smiled. It was a real smile, a warm one, the kind of smile he hadn't given me in years. "I'm good, babe," he said, his voice stronger now. "Get me out of here. I hate this smell." She pulled back and kissed his forehead. Then slowly she turned to me. She lowered her sunglasses. Her eyes were ice blue, cold, calculating. There was no warmth in them, no shared relief that our family member was safe. "You can go now, Bob," she said. Not Dad, not Mr. Sullivan, just Bob. It felt like a dismissal from a boss. Project complete. "You are no longer needed." "I can drive him home," I offered, standing up. "I have the truck outside. It's comfortable." "We got it," Tyler said quickly, cutting me off. He was still looking at his phone. "Go home, Dad. You look tired. Seriously. You look terrible." He wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood there for a moment, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The connection I thought we had, the father and son bond, felt thin, like a thread about to snap. "Okay," I said. "Okay, call me if you need anything." "Yeah, sure," Tyler mumbled. I walked to the elevator. My shoes squeaked on the floor. I felt small. I felt old. As the elevator doors began to slide closed, I looked back down the hallway. The door to their room was open. Jessica was leaning over the bed, whispering something in Tyler's ear. Tyler was nodding slowly. His eyes were fixed on me, through the closing gap of the elevator doors. They weren't the eyes of a son watching his father leave. They were cold, flat, dead. I realized I had left my jacket on the back of the chair. I sighed, pressed the button to open the doors, and walked back to the room. I paused at the door. The room was empty. Tyler and Jessica were gone. I walked in to grab my coat. I looked at the bed next to Tyler's. Mrs. Vance's bed. It was stripped clean. The blue curtain was pulled back. The mattress was bare. "Where is she?" I asked a nurse who was walking by with a cart of linens. "Who?" "The woman in this bed. Mrs. Vance." The nurse glanced at the empty bed. Oh, she checked out this morning. Her daughter came to get her. I looked at the empty pillow. There was something resting on the metal side table, a folded piece of paper. I picked it up. My fingers trembled. It was a page torn from a hospital pamphlet. There were 4 words written in shaky blue ink. Trust your instincts, Bob. I shoved the note into my pocket. It felt heavy against my leg, like a stone, or a warning shot. I walked out of the hospital into the bright afternoon sun, but I couldn't shake the cold feeling that had settled in my chest. The old man is clueless. Was I? I drove home in silence. The radio was off. The engine's hum was the only company I had. My house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a colonial I'd bought 30 years ago with Mary. It used to feel like a fortress, a sanctuary where we raised our son and built a life. Now, pulling into the driveway, it just looked big, too big. I walked inside, and the silence hit me like a physical weight. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was a stale, suffocating stillness. The air smelled of dust and lemon polish, the scent of a house that no longer lived, just existed. I sat in my leather armchair in the living room, the leather creaking under my weight. I didn't turn on the TV, I just stared at the wall where a family photo hung. Tyler at graduation, beaming, Mary proud in her blue dress, and me looking younger, stronger. Mrs. Vance's voice echoed in my head, bouncing around the empty room. He made a call. The old man is clueless. I pulled the crumpled note from my pocket. I smoothed it out on my knee. Trust your instincts, Bob. My instincts were screaming, but my heart was arguing back. He's your son. He's grieving the accident. He's just stressed. 2 days passed in a blur of routine. I watered the plants. I fixed a loose hinge on the back door. I waited for the phone to ring. Radio silence. Finally, I cracked. I texted him. How are you doing? Need anything? 3 hours later, a reply buzzed on the coffee table. Fine. Busy. 2 words. A wall. No warmth. No connection. Just a digital keep-out sign. I was out front the 3rd day, watering the lawn. The rhythmic hiss-thwack of the sprinkler was hypnotic. It was a mindless task, the kind I needed to stop my brain from looping over the hospital scene. Bob, good to see you back. I looked up. Frank Russo was standing at the fence line. Frank had been my neighbor for 20 years. Retired homicide detective. He wore his retirement like a loose coat. Comfortable, but you could tell he was always carrying something heavy underneath. He chewed on a toothpick, rolling it from one side of his mouth to the other. Thanks, Frank, I said, spraying a patch of hydrangeas. Good to be back. Frank didn't move. He leaned his elbows on the white picket fence, watching me. He had that look, the one he used to get when a witness was holding back. Everything okay with the house? He asked casually. Too casually, I frowned, lowering the hose. The water dribbled onto the pavement, darkening the concrete. Yeah, why? Frank shifted the toothpick. He squinted against the sun. Saw Tyler's truck here the other night. My grip tightened on the hose nozzle. When? Tuesday. Late. Around 2:45 a.m. My stomach dropped. Tuesday night, I was sitting in the plastic chair in the ICU, listening to the heart monitor. I was praying for my son's life while he was here. Are you sure, Frank? I asked, my voice tight. Big red Ford. Loud exhaust. Hard to miss in a quiet neighborhood, Frank said. He studied my face, reading the confusion and the fear. He didn't use the driveway, parked on the street, down a bit. Kept the headlights off. Maybe he needed clothes. I lied. I didn't know why I was covering for him. Habit, maybe. Frank nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't buy it. Maybe? But I saw lights on in your office, Bob. My office? Yeah. The side window. Blinds were open a crack. Light was on for about an hour. Then he left. I dropped the hose. It snaked across the driveway, water pooling around my boots. Thanks, Frank, I managed to say. Frank took the toothpick out of his mouth. You need anything, you call me. All right? Yeah, thanks. I turned and walked toward the house. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through deep water. I went straight to my office at the back of the house. The door was shut. I stared at the wood grain. I always left this door ajar. Always. It was a habit from when Tyler was little. so I could hear if he cried. Old habits don't die. Someone had closed it. I pushed the door open. The room was dim, dusty motes, dancing in the slice of light from the hallway. At first glance, everything looked normal. My mahogany desk was clear. The bookshelf was organized, but a perfusionist notices flow. I notice when things are out of rhythm. The chair was turned slightly to the left. I always pushed it in straight. A stack of papers on the corner of the desk was squared off perfectly. Too perfectly. I was messy with my piles. I walked behind the desk. My hands were trembling. I felt like an intruder in my own sanctuary. I looked at the file cabinet. It was an old metal sturdy thing where I kept the tax returns, the deed, the life insurance. I crouched down. The lock cylinder was scratched. Tiny, silver gouges marred the black metal around the keyhole. Someone had forced it, not with a key, but with a tool. A screwdriver, maybe. I pulled the handle. It didn't catch. It slid open smoothly. My hanging folders were pushed back, compressed toward the rear of the drawer. The green tab labeled Financials was bent, creased right down the middle, as if someone had grabbed it in a hurry. I pulled out my checkbook from the folder. It felt light. I flipped to the back. 3 checks were missing. They weren't carefully detached along the perforation. They were torn out. Ragged strips of paper were left behind. Jagged teeth of a crime. I sat down hard on the floor. The carpet was rough against my hands. The room spun slightly. He broke in, while I was holding his hand, while I was begging God not to take him. He was here, in the dark, breaking into my cabinet. I scrambled up and opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, blindingly bright in the dim room. My fingers felt like sausages, clumsy and thick, as I typed in my bank password. Loading, loading, please, please let me be wrong. Let it be a mistake. Let it be anything else. The screen flashed. Recent transactions. My breath caught in my throat. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. $8,500. Transfer to T. Sullivan. I scrolled down, my eyes burning. March 12, $25,000. June 04, $51,500. $85,000. My retirement. The money Mary and I had saved for travel, for emergencies, for a quiet life. Gone. I clicked on the image of the cash check. It enlarged on the screen. There was my signature. Robert Sullivan. It was perfect. The loop on the R. The sharp cross on the T. The way the S tailed off at the end. It was too perfect. It lacked the slight tremor my hand had developed in the last few years. It was a copy of my signature from 10 years ago. Only one person could copy my hand like that. The boy I sat at the kitchen table with for hours, teaching him how to hold a pen. The boy whose homework I corrected. My son wasn't just a thief. He was a forger, and he had been stealing from me for months. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred into gray shapes. The betrayal wasn't a sharp knife. It was a dull, heavy stone crushing my chest. I couldn't breathe. The old man is clueless. Not anymore. I drove to the bank. It was a gray brick building on Main Street, the same place where I'd opened my first savings account 40 years ago. It used to feel like a pillar of the community. Today, it looked like a fortress I had to breathe. My hands felt numb on the steering wheel. I parked the truck and sat there for a moment, watching people use the ATM. They looked so normal. A mother depositing a check, a teenager withdrawing $20. They didn't know their world could collapse in the time it took to click a mouse. Sarah Jenkins met me at the door. She was the branch manager, an old friend of Mary's. We used to have barbecues together in the summer. Bob? She frowned, her professional smile faltering. You look terrible. Is it Tyler? We need to talk, Sarah. My voice was flat. I didn't have the energy for pleasantries. She ushered me into her glass-walled office and closed the door. She locked it. She saw the look in my eyes. I sat down and slid the printouts across the polished desk. I didn't sign these, I said. Sarah put on her reading glasses. She picked up the papers. The silence in the small office was amplified by the hum of the air conditioner. I watched her eyes scan the dates, the amounts. I saw her face pale. Bob. She looked up, taking off her glasses. The signatures match our records. Digitally, they're perfect. They're forgeries, I snapped, my patience snapping like a dry twig. I was in the hospital when that last one cleared. Who is the beneficiary? She hesitated. She tapped her keyboard, staring at the screen. She didn't want to say it. It's Tyler, isn't it? Tyler Sullivan, she whispered. He set himself up as a joint owner. Joint owner? I never authorized that. It was done online. 3 months ago. She turned the screen toward me. There it was. Count status? Joint. Primary, Robert Sullivan. Secondary, Tyler Sullivan. He hadn't just stolen checks. He had stolen my identity. He had logged in, likely using the password I kept in the little black book in my desk, and granted himself full access. He had been planning this while eating Sunday dinner at my table. Freeze it, I said. The perfusionist in me took over. Stop the bleeding. Clamp the line. Freeze everything. Checking, savings, the retirement fund. Lock it down. Bob, if I do that, his cards will stop working. If he's out of town, I don't care if he's starving in the street, I said, my voice trembling with a rage I didn't know I possessed. Freeze it. I left the bank feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. The bleeding had stopped, but the damage was done. My next stop was Arthur Miller's office. Arthur was my estate lawyer. His office smelled of stale cigar smoke and old leather binding. It was a smell from another era, a time when a handshake meant something. Arthur sat behind his massive desk, polishing his round glasses with a microfiber cloth. Round and round, it was a nervous tic he had. This is serious, Bob, he said, putting the glasses back on. This isn't just a family dispute. This is felony fraud. Identity theft. Elder abuse. The words hung in the air. Elder abuse. Is that what I was? An elder victim? He's my son, Arthur. He's a criminal, Arthur corrected gently but firmly. You need to separate the two. The boy you raised is gone. The man who did this is a predator. I looked at the floor. I need to know why $85,000 doesn't just vanish. Arthur opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. It was plain white, no logo, just a name and a number. Jack Carter, Private Investigations. Jack is invisible, Arthur said. He's expensive, but he finds things the police can't, or won't. Hire him, I said. I to know who my son really is. I met Jack Carter at a diner on the edge of town. It was the kind of place where truck drivers stopped for pie at 3 a.m. Jack was a man you would never remember. Gray suit, gray hair, a face that blended into the wallpaper. He didn't shake my hand. He just pointed to the booth. I sat down. Arthur said you were the best. Jack didn't smile. He took out a small notebook. I need dates, names, vehicle plates, and the check numbers. I gave him everything. He wrote it down in a shorthand I couldn't read. Give me 48 hours, Jack said. 48 hours. My life seemed to run in 2-day cycles of hell. First the hospital, now this. What do I do? I asked. Go home, Jack said. Act normal. Don't confront him. If he knows you know, he might run. Or worse. Or worse. The words echoed Mrs. Vance's warning. 2 days later, same diner. It was raining outside, a cold, miserable drizzle that streaked the windows. Jack slid a thick manila folder across the formica table. Drink your coffee first, he said. My stomach nodded. Just tell me. Open it. I opened the folder. The first photo showed Tyler walking into a building with flashing neon lights. The Grand Casino. He looked frantic, his hair disheveled. The next photo showed him at a poker table. He was sweating. You could see the sheen on his forehead, even in the grainy image. He had a stack of chips, but his face wasn't one of a winner. It was the face of a man drowning. He's a gambler, I asked, looking up. He's an addict, Jack corrected. There's a difference. A gambler knows the odds. An addict chases the high until he hits the bottom. Jack pointed to another photo. This one was taken in an alleyway. Tyler was handing a thick white envelope to a man. The man was large, wearing a leather jacket. A distinctive tattoo of a scorpion crawled up his neck. Who is that? Marcus Vane, Jack said. Loan shark. Enforcer. He operates out of the basement of a pool hall in the city. He's not someone you mess with, Bob. How much does he owe? $250,000, Jack said calmly. I choked on my breath. $250,000? Principal plus interest. The interest rates, Vane charges, are aggressive. Tyler borrowed 50 to win back the 20 he lost. Then he borrowed 100 to win back the 50. It spiraled, and the money he stole from me, a drop in the bucket, just enough to pay the VIG, the weekly interest to keep Vane from breaking his legs. Jack, I whispered. Is he in danger? Vane gave him a deadline, Jack said. Next week, Tuesday. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black digital recorder. I tapped his phone, Jack said. Technically illegal, but you needed to hear this. He placed the device on the table between the salt shaker and the ketchup bottle. He pressed play. Static hissed for a second. Then Tyler's voice filled the booth. It was crystal clear. The old man is clueless. My heart stopped. It was the exact phrase Mrs. Vance had repeated. He's sitting on a gold mine. The house is paid off. Market value is at least 600. Another voice laughed. It was deep, scratchy. Vane. You gonna ask him for it, kid? Tyler's voice changed. It became sneering, dismissive. Ask him? No, he won't give it up. He thinks he's gonna live forever. But I'll get the deed soon. How? Vane asked. There was a pause on the tape, a silence that stretched for an eternity. Then Tyler spoke. Accidents happen to old men every day. Falls. Carbon monoxide. Brake failures. Click. Jack stopped the tape. Silence in the diner. The sound of rain against the glass seemed to fade away. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. He's planning to kill me, I whispered. The words tasted like ash. He's desperate, Jack said. His face remained neutral, but his eyes were hard. Desperate men do desperate things. He sees you as an ATM, Bob, an ATM that's holding on to his life. I stared at the recorder. My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The boy I held when he cried over a broken toy. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was trading my life for his debt. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I need to see him, I said. Bob, don't, Jack warned. He's dangerous. He's my son, I said. I need to look him in the eye. I need to see if there's anything left of him. I sat at the kitchen table. The wood was cool under my palms. I had placed the manila folder in the center, perfectly aligned with the edges of the table. I called Tyler. Hey, Dad. His voice was bright, chirpy. It was a performance. I could hear the wind rushing in the background, the sound of him driving. What's up? Everything okay? Come over, I said. My voice was steady, stripped of all inflection. We need to talk. Sure, I'm actually just leaving the gym. Be there in 10. He lied so easily. The background noise wasn't the gym. It was the highway. He was always running. I hung up and waited. The house felt like a courtroom. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked loudly. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. It was the only heartbeat in the room. I looked at my hands. They were the hands of a man who had saved lives, who had held a beating heart to keep it warm. Now, they felt useless. I couldn't save this. I couldn't fix the rot that had taken hold of my son. He arrived at noon. I watched through the window as his red Ford truck rumbled into the driveway. He parked crookedly, one tire on the grass. He slammed the door and jogged up the walk. He burst through the front door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dad! He went to hug me. I stood stiffly. His arms wrapped around me, but I didn't hug back. He smelled of nervous sweat and stale cigarette smoke, masked by too much cologne. It was the smell of fear. He pulled back, sensing the coldness. His smile faltered, twitching at the corners. What's up, Dad? You look serious. Sit down, Tyler. He laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. Okay, sounds ominous. Did I forget your birthday? He sat at the table, drumming his fingers on the wood. He wouldn't look at the folder. He knew it was there, but he refused to acknowledge it. I didn't speak. I just reached out and flipped the folder open. The photos slid out like a fan of playing cards. I saw her at the casino, Tyler with Marcus Vane in the alley. The copy of the forged check. Tyler froze. His fingers stopped drumming. The color drained from his face, leaving it gray and pasty. He looked like a child caught with his hand in the jar. But this wasn't cookies. This was my life. Explain this, I said. He stared at the photo of Vane. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. You spied on me. His voice was a whisper, but it rose quickly to a shout. He stood up, knocking his chair back. You hired someone to follow me. Who does that? You stole from me. I roared, slamming my hand on the table. The sudden noise made him flinch. You forged my signature. You drained the retirement account. You stole $85,000, Tyler. I didn't steal it, he yelled back, his face turning red, veins bulging in his neck. I borrowed it. I was going to pay you back. With what? I pointed to the photo of the casino. With poker chips. With a slot machine ticket. I have a system, Dad. You don't understand. I was up 10 grand last week, and now you owe Marcus Vane $250,000, I said coldly. The room went silent. Tyler stopped pacing. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. How do you know that name? I know everything, Ty. I know about the debt. I know about the deadline next Tuesday. Tyler collapsed back into his chair. He put his head in his hands. He started to cry, but it wasn't the crying of remorse. It was the crying of a trapped animal. They're going to kill me, Dad, he sobbed into his palms. They threatened Jessica. They said they'd hurt her if I didn't pay. Then you should have come to me, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. We could have gone to the police. We could have managed this. He looked up. His eyes were wild. Police? No, you can't call the police on Vane. He has guys everywhere. There's only one way out. He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. His palms were clammy. Sign over the house, he said. I stared at him. What? The house, he said, talking fast now, desperate. It's worth 600 grand. We sell it fast to a cash buyer. I pay off Vane. I pay you back. The 85,000. We start fresh. And where do I live? I asked calmly. I looked into it, he said, wiping his nose. There's a great assisted living place in Oak Creek. It's nice, Dad. They have meals, activities, a home. I pulled my hand away as if he had burned me. I'm 65 years old, Tyler. I'm not an invalid. This is my home. I built this life with your mother. You don't need all this space, he shouted, standing up again. It's just brick and wood. I'm your son. Are you going to let them kill me over a stupid house? I'm not letting them kill you, I said, standing up to meet him. But I'm not letting you destroy me either. You made this mess. You selfish old man. He spat. The venom in his voice was shocking. You sit here on your pile of money while I'm drowning. Get out, I said. Dad, please, get out. I pointed to the door. Give me your key. Now. Tyler looked at me. His eyes narrowed. The fear was replaced by pure, unfiltered rage. He reached into his pocket and slammed his keyring onto the table. Then he turned. On the sideboard stood a blue glass vase. It was hand-blown, delicate. Mary had bought it on our honeymoon in Italy. It was her favorite thing in the house. Tyler grabbed it. You love your things more than you love me, he screamed. He threw the vase against the wall. Smash. The sound was explosive. Blue shards rained down onto the hardwood floor like sharp rain. I flinched, but I didn't move. I watched the pieces settle. You'll regret this, he screamed. You'll be sorry when I'm dead. He stormed out. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled in their frames. The house shook. Then silence. I stood in the center of the room. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. I looked at the broken blue glass scattered across the floor. I walked over and picked up a large shard. It was sharp enough to cut. I turned it over in my hand. He didn't just break a vase. He broke the last tether, holding us together. I looked at the empty spot where my son had been standing. The air still swirled where he had moved. But he was gone. I was alone, and for the first time in my life, I was truly afraid of my own child. I took my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking, but I dialed the number Arthur had given me. "Jack?" I said when he answered. "He's on, and he's desperate. Lock the doors, Bob," Jack said. "I'm on my way. I changed the locks that afternoon." It's a strange feeling, keying a deadbolt to keep your own child out. Every turn of the screwdriver felt like I was tightening a screw in my own coffin. Frank came over to help. We didn't talk much. We just worked. We installed cameras at the front door, the back porch, and the garage. "Aim this one lower," Frank grunted, adjusting the lens on the garage camera to catch license plates. We set up the monitors in my office. The screens glowed blue in the dim light, showing 4 different angles of my empty yard. It didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a security station. For a week I lived in the glow of those screens. I watched the wind blow the trees. I watched the mailman deliver bills. I watched shadows lengthen and shorten. I slept with a baseball bat under my bed. I jumped at every creak of the floorboards. The house, once my sanctuary, had become a cage. Tuesday morning, 10 hours in a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID said City Medical Center. I picked it up, expecting it to be about my own cholesterol prescription. "Mr. Sullivan," the voice was professional. Clipped. "This is Dr. Aris Thorne. I'm calling from the internal medicine department." "Yes?" "I have the request here for your physical examination, but the date on the paperwork is smudged. I wanted to confirm if you were coming in this afternoon or tomorrow morning." I froze. My hand tightened on the receiver. "I don't have a physical scheduled, Dr. Thorne." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "That's odd," Dr. Thorne said. "I have a requisition form right here. It's from Secure Life Insurance. For the new policy." The room seemed to tilt. "Policy?" "Yes, the $1 million term life policy. The application requires a full physical and blood work before they can underwrite it." "Who is the beneficiary?" I asked. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. It was my operating room voice. "Let me check. Yes, here it is. Tyler Sullivan, son." I closed my eyes. "Dr. Thorne," I said, "I didn't apply for this policy. I didn't sign these papers." The silence on the other end was heavy. "I see," the doctor said slowly. "Mr. Sullivan, this application was submitted electronically last week. If you didn't authorize this, then someone is trying to insure your life without your knowledge." "Cancel it," I said. "Cancel the appointment. Flag the application as fraudulent, and send me a copy of everything you have." "I will, Mr. Sullivan. Are you safe?" "I don't know," I whispered. I hung up. I sat in the silence of my office. He wasn't just waiting for me to die. He wasn't just hoping for an accident. He was betting on it. $1 million. He had priced my life. And he needed that payout to satisfy Marcus Vane. I called Detective Henderson. Arthur had introduced us over the phone, but this was the first time I heard his voice shift from polite interest to active duty. "He's escalated," Henderson said after I told him about the call. "This isn't fraud anymore, Bob. This is conspiracy to commit murder. He's setting the board." "What do we do?" I asked. "Do we arrest him?" "We could," Henderson said, "for the fraud. But he'd be out on bail in 24 hours. And if he's desperate enough to go to a loan shark, a fraud charge won't stop him. He needs that money." "So what?" "We need to catch him in the act," Henderson said darkly. "We need to prove intent to harm. We need to give him an opportunity." "You want me to be bait?" I said. "I want you to be the trap. I couldn't do this alone. I needed family. But the only family I had left was in Philadelphia. I called Emily. My daughter flew in that night. She looked so much like Mary. The same dark hair, the same sharp, observant eyes. But she had my stubbornness. She sat at the kitchen table reading the files Jack Carter had compiled. She looked at the photos of Tyler at the casino. She read the transcript of the recording. She looked at the life insurance application. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She just cried. Quiet, heartbroken tears. "He's a monster, Dad," she whispered, wiping her eyes. "He's scared," I said automatically. It was a reflex. Defending him. Stop it, she snapped. She slammed the file shut. He's not scared. A scared person asks for help. A scared person begs. A monster plans his father's murder for a payout. She reached across the table and took my hands. Her grip was strong. He's gone, Dad. The brother I knew, he's gone. You have to accept that. If you don't, he will kill you. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. Not for herself, but for me. I know, I said, and saying it out loud broke something inside me. I know. The next morning, the plan was set. Henderson came to the house in an unmarked car. He wore a windbreaker and looked like a plumber. He swept the house for bugs, just in case Tyler had been smarter than we thought. Clean, he said. We sat in the living room. Emily, Henderson, Frank, and me. He needs an accident, Henderson said. The insurance won't pay out for suicide or natural causes this quickly. It has to be an accident. A fall, a fire, a car crash. He asked for the house, I said. He wants me to sell it. No, Emily said. He knows you won't sell. He moved past that when he filed the insurance policy. He needs you dead, Dad. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. Incoming call, Tyler. Everyone froze. Henderson signaled me to answer. He pointed to the speaker button. I took a deep breath. I channeled 30 years of keeping my hands steady while holding a human life. Hello, Dad, Tyler's voice came through. I'm sorry about the vase. I'm sorry about everything. His voice was calm. Too calm. It was the smooth, practiced tone of a telemarketer. Or a predator. I want to make it right, he said. I looked at Henderson. He nodded. How, Tyler? My truck is in the shop, he lied. Transmission issues. I have a job interview tomorrow. A big one. Construction manager. Real money. He paused. Can I borrow your truck? Just for the day? I closed my eyes. The truck? Sure, son, I said. Come get it. Thanks, Dad. You won't regret it. I hung up. He's going to sabotage it, Jack Carter said from the doorway. He had slipped in quietly. He's not going to a job interview. He's going to make sure you never make it to yours. Let him take it, Henderson said. We'll be watching. The next morning was gray. The sky hung low and heavy over the neighborhood, a wet wool blanket that muffled sound. I stood on the porch, the keys to my Silverado in my hand. They felt heavy, cold metal teeth that used to mean freedom, work and family trips. Now they were bait. Tyler's sedan pulled up to the curb. He didn't park in the driveway. He jogged up the walk, dressed in a clean button-down shirt and slacks. The job interview costume. Hey, Dad, he said, breathless. He wouldn't look me directly in the eye. He looked at my chin, my shoulder, the keys. Here, I said, holding them out. He reached for them. Our fingers brushed. His skin was warm, alive. For a split second, I wanted to pull back. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him, to scream, Stop this! You don't have to do this. But I didn't. I let go. Thanks, he said, closing his fist around the keys. I'll have it back by 5. Good luck with the interview, I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from inside a drum. Yeah, thanks. Wish me luck. He turned and walked to my truck. He climbed in, adjusted the mirrors, a performance of a careful driver, and started the engine. The V8 roared to life. He backed out and drove away. I watched him go until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Inside the house, Emily was standing by the window, tears streaming down her face. Henderson was on his radio. Target is mobile, Henderson said into the mic. Jack, he's all yours. I sat in the kitchen with Emily. We didn't speak. We just listened to the squawk of Henderson's radio, tracing my son's path through the city. Subject is heading south on I-93. Subject is taking exit 1, exit 12. Exit 12. I looked up. There are no office parks off exit 12. That's the industrial district. He's not going to an interview, Bob, Henderson said gently. 20 minutes later, Jack's voice crackled over the radio. Subject has arrived at Eastside Auto. 4400 block. Meeting with a male, Caucasian grease stains. Identifying as Tony Rossi. Eastside Auto. I knew the place. It was a chop shop disguised as a repair garage. Tony Rossi was a mechanic who had lost his license years ago for inspection fraud. They're putting the truck on the lift, Jack reported. I'm moving in for a closer look. We waited. The silence in the kitchen was agonizing. Every minute felt like an hour. I imagined my truck, my trusty Silverado, being violated by dirty hands. 30 minutes passed. Then Jack's voice returned. It was tight, urgent. He's paying Rossi. Cash. Thick envelope. The truck is coming down. He's leaving. Follow him. Henderson asked.
No, Jack said. I need to see what they did. Rossi is going to lunch. I'm going into the shop. Another 10 minutes of silence.
Then my phone rang. It was Jack. Bob, he said. The tone in his voice made my blood freeze. Do not drive that truck. Under any circumstances. What did he do, Jack? I'm looking at your rear axle right now, Jack said. I could hear the clang of metal in the background. He didn't cut the lines. That would be too obvious. If the brakes failed instantly, you'd notice in the driveway. So what did he do? He bled them, Jack said. He loosened the bleeder valves on the rear calipers just a hair. Not enough to leak while it's sitting. But once you build up pressure, once you hit highway speeds and slam on them, they'll fail, I whispered. The perfusionist in me understood the hydraulics perfectly. Pressure loss. System failure. You'd have about 20% braking power, Jack said. At 60 miles per hour, that's not a stop. That's a collision. He didn't want me to just crash. He wanted me to crash fast. He wanted me to be obliterated on the highway. Bring it in, Jack, Henderson said. We have the evidence. Jack returned an hour later. He had photos. High-resolution shots of the loosened valves, the pooling fluid. Henderson spread them on the table. This is it, the detective said. Attempted murder. We have the motive, the means, and the opportunity. So arrest him, Emily said, her voice trembling. Go get him. Henderson shook his head. If we arrest him now, his lawyer will argue it was Rossi's negligence. He'll say he just took it in for a tune-up. Rossi will keep his mouth shut. So what do we do? I asked. Henderson looked at me. His eyes were serious. We need the confession. We need him to react to the news of your death. Or your survival. You want me to drive it? I said. No, Henderson said. That's suicide. We're going to stage the crash. We'll close down a section of the old access road near the river. We'll make it look real. I looked at the photos of the sabotaged brakes. My son had paid a man cash to loosen a screw, knowing it would send me into a concrete wall. I'll do it, I said. Dad, no, Emily pleaded. I have to, I said. I stood up. I felt strangely calm. The grief had burned itself out, leaving only a cold, hard resolve. He thinks I'm clueless. He thinks I'm weak. I need him to see me one last time. We set it up for the next morning. The police closed a stretch of river road. It was a lonely two-lane strip, bordered by trees and a steep embankment. I sat in the truck. I was wearing a helmet and pads under my jacket, concealed. A stunt driver had briefed me, but I insisted on being behind the wheel for the approach. I needed to feel what Tyler wanted me to feel. I accelerated. 20 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour. The engine hummed. The truck felt normal. That was the terrifying part. It felt completely safe. I saw the orange cones ahead, the crash zone. I pressed the brake pedal, squish. It went to the floor. There was no resistance, no grab, just a soft, spongy nothingness. Panic spiked in my chest. Even knowing it was coming, the primal fear of losing control took over. My heart hammered against my ribs. This is what he hid. He wanted me to feel this panic right before I died. I pumped the pedal. Nothing. I yanked the wheel to the left, aiming for the prepared barrier of water-filled barrels and hay bales. Crash. The impact was violent. The airbags exploded. A hot, white punch to the face. The world spun. Metal screamed. Dust filled the cabin. I sat there for a moment, ears ringing, trapped in the white deflation of the airbag. I was alive. But as far as Tyler Sullivan was concerned, his father was dead. I was rushed to Mass General. It was poetic, in a dark way. The same hospital where this nightmare began. The same walls that held Miss Vance's warning. They put me in a private room. Detective Henderson set the stage. Bandages wrapped around my head. A neck brace. Wires taped to my chest, leading to a monitor that beeped with a steady, strong rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The room was dim. Henderson sat in the corner, invisible in the shadows of the bathroom doorway. "The story is live," he whispered. He turned the volume up on the wall-mounted TV. The local news anchor looked grave. "Breaking news tonight. A dramatic crash on River Road has left a local man in critical condition. Robert Sullivan, 65, lost control of his vehicle due to an apparent mechanical failure. Critical condition, that was the bait. Not dead, but vulnerable." I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles. I counted the perforations. 1, 2, 3. My son was watching this. Was he relieved, or was he panicking? Because I wasn't in the morgue. 2 hours later, the hallway outside erupted in noise. Footsteps running. "Dad, where is he? Let me through." It was Tyler. The performance had begun. The door swung open. He rushed in, his face flushed, hair messy. He looked like the picture of a distraught son. He ran to the bedside and grabbed the metal rail. "Dad! Oh my God!" He was crying. Tears streamed down his face. He reached out and grabbed my hand, the hand that wasn't connected to an IV line. "I'm here," he sobbed. "I'm right here." I lay still. I kept my eyes half closed, feigning weakness. But I was watching him. I was studying him with the cold detachment of a surgeon. I squeezed his hand weakly. He looked up at my face. He searched my eyes. And there it was. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. The grief vanished, replaced by a sharp, calculating flicker. His eyes darted to the monitor, then back to me. It wasn't relief that I was alive. It was disappointment. It was the annoyance of a man who has to clean up a mess he thought was finished. "Why aren't you dead?" The thought was so loud in his expression it might as well have been shouted. "I'm okay, son," I whispered, forcing the words out through a dry throat. "I'm alive." Tyler blinked, and the mask slammed back into place. "Thank God," he said, his voice trembling. "I was so scared. When the police called, I thought I lost you." He squeezed my hand harder. It didn't feel like comfort. It felt like he was testing for a pulse. It felt cold. "The truck," I rasped. "The brakes just went. Don't think about it," Tyler said quickly. "It doesn't matter. You're safe. I'll take care of everything. I'll handle the insurance, the house, everything. The insurance." He couldn't help himself. "You're a good boy, Ty." I lied. The taste of it was bitter on my tongue. He stayed for an hour pacing the room, checking his phone. Every few minutes. Texting. Probably vain, probably explaining why the accident hadn't paid out yet. "I have to go," he said finally. "I need to get some things for you from the house. I'll be back." He kissed my forehead. His lips were dry. "Rest up, Dad. You need your strength." He walked out. As soon as the door clicked shut, Henderson stepped out of the bathroom. "Did you see it?" I asked. "I saw it," Henderson said grimly. He was checking the exits. 2 days passed. I recovered miraculously fast. The doctors who were briefed by Henderson cleared me for discharge. Tyler picked me up. He was agitated. His leg bounced up and down as he drove. He needed a new plan. He was running out of time. Vane's deadline was Tuesday. Today was Sunday. "Dad," he said as we pulled away from the hospital, "you shouldn't go back to that house yet. It's too gloomy. Too many bad memories." "Where should I go?" My friend, Steve. He has a boat. A yacht, really. It's docked down at the marina. He said we could use it for the day. Just get some fresh air. The sea air is good for trauma. I looked at him. A boat. Isolation. Deep water. No witnesses. It was clumsy. It was desperate. "Just you and me?" I asked. "Yeah," Tyler smiled. It was tight, strained, father and son, like old times. "We can talk. Really talk." I looked out the window. I saw Henderson's unmarked car following 3 lengths back. "Okay, Tyler," I said softly. "Let's go." I'd like that. The marina was socked in with fog. The gray mist rolled off the Atlantic, obscuring the horizon. The masts of the sailboats looked like skeleton fingers pointing at the sky. We walked down the dock. The wood was slick with moisture. Tyler led me to a white cabin cruiser at the end of the pier. The Osprey. "Here we are," he said, hopping aboard. He offered me a hand. I looked at his hand. If I took it, I was stepping into the kill zone. If I took it, there was no turning back. I reached under my jacket and tapped the small wire taped to my chest. One tap. "I'm going in." I took his hand. He pulled me aboard. "Let's get out of here," he said, untying the ropes. He started the engines. They rumbled with a deep, throaty growl. As we pulled away from the dock, I looked back. I saw nothing but fog, but I knew they were there. The police boats, waiting in the mist. We motored out. The city skyline vanished behind us. The water turned from gray to black. I sat on the white leather bench at the stern. The wind whipped my hair. Tyler stood at the wheel, staring straight ahead. He wasn't my son anymore. He was a stranger with a debt to pay, and I was the currency. We were 5 miles out when he cut the engines. The silence of the ocean was instant and overwhelming. Just the lap of waves against the hull. Slap, slap. Tyler turned around. He looked at me. The wind blew his hair across his face. "Want a drink, Dad?" he asked. "No." He poured himself a whiskey from a flask. He took a long pull. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "You know," he said, his voice carrying easily in the dead quiet. "You have 9 lives, old man." The pretense was over. The mask was gone. "The truck should have killed you," he said. Conversationally, I watched them loosen the valves. It was a sure thing. I stood up slowly and my legs were steady. "You cut the lines," I said. "I did." He didn't even blink. He didn't deny it. "Well, I paid for it." "Same thing." "Why, Tyler?" I asked. "I gave you everything." He laughed. A harsh barking sound. "You gave me lectures," he shouted, throwing the flask into the ocean. "You gave me rules. I need money, Dad. Real money. Now. Marcus Fiend," I said. He froze. "You know? I know he's going to kill you." "Exactly." Tyler screamed. His face twisted into a mask of pure terror and rage. "He's going to kill me. So it's you or me, Dad. That's the math. It's simple math." He stepped toward me. He was young, strong, desperate. I was old, tired. "So you kill me instead?" I asked, backing up against the railing. The cold metal pressed into my spine. "You've lived your life," he yelled. "You had your time. Just die already. Why is it so hard for you to just die?" He lunged. He hit me with the force of a linebacker. My back slammed against the fiberglass railing. The breath left my lungs in a sharp, agonizing whoosh. The cold metal dug into my spine, the only thing keeping me from tumbling into the black Atlantic water churning below. Tyler's hands weren't on the wheel anymore. They were on my lapels, bunching the fabric of my jacket, shoving me backward. "Do it," he screamed, spit flying onto my face. "Just fall. Make it easy." I grabbed his wrists. My hands, arthritic and aged, felt like paper against his strength. I looked into his face. It was inches from mine. I didn't see my son. I didn't see the toddler who used to fall asleep on my chest. I saw a stranger. I saw dilated pupils, sweat-drenched skin, and a jaw clenched in murderous intent. The creature in front of me was fueled by adrenaline and the terror of a debt he couldn't pay. "Tyler? Don't," I choked out. "You don't have to do this." "It's too late." He shoved again, harder. My feet slipped on the wet deck. My center of gravity shifted. I was tipping. I looked down at the dark water. It looked like oil, cold, final. I looked back at him. "I love you, son," I whispered. He flinched. For a microsecond the rage wavered. But then the desperation flooded back, hotter than before. "Shut up," he roared. He let go of my jacket with one hand and reached for my throat. His fingers grazed my windpipe. I screamed, not in fear, but in command. Now, the word ripped out of my throat, amplified by the wire taped to my chest. Whump, 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 whump. The sound was instantaneous and deafening. It didn't come from the water. It came from the sky. The fog above us tore apart as a police helicopter dropped from the gray ceiling like a stone. The downwash hit us like a physical blow, flattening the waves, whipping our clothes, and drowning out Tyler's scream. The spotlight beamed down, blindingly white. It pinned us to the deck like insects. "Police!" A voice boomed from a loudspeaker, godlike and distorted by the wind. "Step away from the victim." Hands in the air. Tyler froze. He looked up at the roaring machine, squinting against the light. He looked around. From the mist, the shapes of 2 harbor patrol boats materialized, sirens wailing, blue lights cutting through the gloom. They had been ghosting us the whole time. The reality hit him. There was no payout. There was no accident. There was no escape. He let go of my throat. He stumbled back, his hands trembling violently. "Dad?" he whimpered. The roar of the helicopter made it hard to hear, but I read his lips. "Dad?" He looked at me, his eyes wide with the sudden, crushing realization of what had just happened. He wasn't the predator anymore. He was a boy who had broken the ultimate rule. "Get down," the loudspeaker boomed. Armed officers in tactical gear were already boarding from the patrol boats, leaping over the gunwales with practiced precision. Their boots thudded heavily on the deck. "Tyler Sullivan, on your knees, now." Tyler didn't fight. He didn't run. He just collapsed. He sank to the wet fiberglass deck, his knees hitting the hard surface. He put his hands on his head, curling into a ball. "Dad, help me," he screamed as the officers swarmed him. It was the most painful sound I had ever heard. Help me. He had just tried to murder me. He had just tried to throw me into the ocean. And now, in his moment of consequence, he called for his father. 2 officers grabbed his arms, wrenching them behind his back. The metallic click-click of handcuffs cut through the noise of the sirens. "You set me up," Tyler yelled, twisting his head to look at me as they hauled him up. "You set me up?" I stood by the railing, adjusting my jacket. My chest hurt where the wire had been taped. My heart hurt more. I looked at him. I didn't step forward to help. I didn't tell the officers to be gentle. "I didn't set you up, Tyler," I said, my voice flat, dead. "I protected myself. I'm your son," he screamed, tears mixing with the spray on his face. "I'm your son." "No," I whispered, though he couldn't hear me over the engines. "My son died a long time ago. You're just the man who killed him." They dragged him to the patrol boat. He was sobbing now, a raw, ugly sound. "Dad, don't let them take me. Marcus will kill me in there." "Dad?" I watched them push him onto the police vessel. I watched him disappear into the cabin. An officer approached me. He was young, with a kind face. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Sullivan, are you injured?" I looked at the spot on the deck where Tyler had been kneeling. It was empty now. "Mr. Sullivan," I looked up at the gray sky, at the helicopters circling away, at the dissolving fog. "I'm fine," I said. The lie tasted like salt and ash. I stood alone on the deck of the Osprey, the boat rocking gently in the wake of the police cruisers. I was alive. I was safe. But as I looked at the empty horizon, I knew the truth. The fall into the water wouldn't have killed me any more than this moment did. The trial didn't happen immediately. The legal system is a slow-moving beast. For 6 months, I lived in a limbo of depositions, meetings with prosecutors, and avoiding the gaze of my neighbors. When the day finally arrived, the courtroom felt less like a hall of justice and more like an operating theater. It was cold, sterile, and smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I sat in the front row behind the prosecutor. The wood of the bench was hard against my spine. Tyler sat at the defense table. He looked smaller. The jail suit was ill-fitting, hanging off his frame. He had lost weight. His hair, usually styled, was limp. He didn't look like the man on the boat. He looked like the boy I used to scold for not cleaning his room. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at his hands, folded on the table, picking at a loose thread on his cuff. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Alana Hayes, laid out the case like a surgeon. She didn't need theatrics. She had the facts. Tony Rossi took the stand first. The mechanic looked out of place in a tie. He had taken a plea deal, 5 years for testimony. He couldn't look at Tyler either. "He paid me $3,000. Rossi mumbled into the microphone. Cash said he needed the brakes to feel spongy. Said he wanted a scare, not a kill. But I knew what loosening those valves meant at highway speeds. Jack Carter was next. He was professional, detached. He played the tapes. The sound of Tyler's voice filled the high-ceilinged room. The old man is clueless. I'll have the deed soon. The jury shifted in their seats. I saw a woman in the back row look at me with pity. I hated it. I didn't want pity. I wanted to wake up. Jessica was the final knife. My daughter-in-law, the woman Tyler had tried to impress, tried to save. She walked to the stand in sensible heels and a modest dress. The sunglasses were gone. The arrogance was gone. In its place was a cold, reptilian survival instinct. I didn't know, she lied. Her voice was steady. I knew we had debts. I knew he was stressed. But I never knew he would hurt Bob. I love Bob. She looked at me and smiled. A sad, practiced smile. Tyler looked up then. He stared at his wife. His jaw dropped slightly. He realized in that moment that he had destroyed his soul for a woman who was currently bargaining for immunity. The prosecution calls Robert Sullivan. I stood up. My knees popped. The walk to the witness stand felt like walking the plank. I placed my hand on the Bible. The leather was cool, I do. I sat down. I looked out at the room. I saw Emily in the gallery, gripping a tissue. I saw Frank. And I saw Tyler. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. There was no anger left in them. Just a vast, hollow terror. Mr. Sullivan, Miss Hayes asked gently, "Can you tell the court what happened on the boat?" I took a breath. I looked at the jury. He asked me if I wanted a drink, I said. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Then he told me that I had lived long enough. Did he touch you? He grabbed me. He tried to throw me over the rail. Did you believe he intended to kill you? The room went silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. I looked at Tyler. I remembered the first time I held him. I remembered teaching him to drive in that same truck he sabotaged. Yes, I whispered. I'm sorry, Miss Sullivan. Could you speak up? I straightened my back. I looked my son in the eye. Yes, he intended to kill me. He told me it was simple math. My life for his debt. Tyler put his head on the table and wept. It wasn't a performance this time. It was the sound of a man watching his life dissolve. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. I spent those hours sitting on a bench in the hallway, staring at a stain on the marble floor. When we were called back in, the energy in the room had changed. It was heavy, final. We find the defendant, Tyler Sullivan, guilty on all counts. Attempted murder in the first degree, insurance fraud, identity theft. The judge didn't waste time. He looked at Tyler with disdain. Mr. Sullivan, you preyed on the one person in this world whose duty was to protect you. You betrayed the most sacred trust in human society, the bond between parent and child. Tyler stood, trembling. I sentence you to 20 years in the state penitentiary. No possibility of parole for 15 years. 20 years. He would be 60s and he got out. I would be 85, or dead. Effectively, it was a life sentence. It was the end of our line. The gavel banged. Crack. It sounded like a gunshot. Bailiffs moved in. They grabbed Tyler by the elbows. The chains on his ankles rattled, a terrible metallic shimmer of sound. As they turned him to lead him out the side door, he dug his heels in. He twisted his body around to face the gallery, to face me. The room was buzzing with people gathering their bags. But for us, the noise faded. "Dad," he mouthed. No sound came out. He looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't even fear anymore. It was pure childlike regret. "I'm sorry," he mouthed again. I stood there, clutching the railing of the bench. My knuckles were white. I wanted to say something. I wanted to yell, "I forgive you." I wanted to yell, "Why?" But I said nothing. I just nodded. A single, slow nod. The bailiffs shoved him forward. He stumbled, then regained his footing. The heavy door opened, and he was swallowed by the shadows of the holding cell. The door clicked shut. I stood in the emptying courtroom, the victim, the winner. I had survived the plot. I had kept my house. I had saved my money. But as I walked out into the blinding afternoon sun, I knew the truth. Marcus Vane didn't need to kill me. Tyler had done a better job than any hitman ever could. He had left me breathing, but he had taken everything that mattered. I sold the house in an acre. I couldn't stay there. Every time I walked past the dining room, I heard the crash of Mary's blue vase. Every time I walked into my office, I saw the scratched lock on the file cabinet. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene tape that never came down. I packed 30 years of life into 50 cardboard boxes. I left the furniture. I left the rugs. I wanted to travel light. I moved to Philadelphia, into a brownstone apartment, 2 blocks from Emily's house. It was smaller, noisier, alive. I started having coffee with Emily every morning at 7 a.m. We didn't talk about the trial. We didn't talk about the boat. We talked about her job, the weather, the local sports teams. We rebuilt the bridge between us, 1 cup of dark roast at a time. But I still woke up at 2:45 a.m. every single night. I hired Jack Carter one last time. Not to catch a thief, but to find a savior. Find Mrs. Vance, I told him. It took him 2 days. She was in a nursing home in Jersey, a quiet place with ivy on the walls. I drove down on a Tuesday. The smell of the hallway was familiar. Lavender and antiseptic. It triggered a spike of adrenaline, a phantom echo of the ICU. I found her in the solarium, watching the birds at the feeder. She looked smaller than I remembered. Frailer, but when she turned to look at me, those cloudy eyes were the same. "Bob," she said. She didn't seem surprised. I sat down next to her. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. It was a cheap gold-plated wristwatch. I had found it on the bedside table in the hospital after she vanished, right next to the note. I'd kept it in my pocket during the trial, a talisman of truth. I handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands. She turned it over. The face was cracked. The hands were frozen. "It stopped," she whispered. "I know," I said. "Look at the time." She squinted. 2:45. The exact time Frank saw Tyler's truck outside my house. The exact time my son broke into my life. "You knew," I said. "How did you know?" She looked at me, then out at the birds. "I didn't know the time, Bob. I just knew the tone. I've heard that whispered before. In my own family." She squeezed the watch, then handed it back to me. "Keep it," she said. "Why?" "To remember," she said softly. "That stopping saved you. If you hadn't stopped to listen, if you hadn't trusted the fear, I'd be dead," I finished. She patted my hand. Her skin was dry, like old parchment. "You're alive, Bob. Don't waste it looking back." I took her advice, but I didn't retire. I used the money Tyler had tried to kill me for, to start a foundation. The Sullivan Initiative. We work with seniors. We teach them about digital fraud. You teach them how to spot the signs of financial abuse. We teach them that family doesn't grant immunity from betrayal. I spend my days in community centers and church basements. I tell my story. I show them the photos of the truck. I show them the scratched lock. I see the horror in their faces. But I also see the recognition. I see the light turn on in the eyes of a widow in the back row, realizing that her grandson's borrowing might be something else. I am not just a victim anymore. I am a warning, and I am a shield. I sat at my new desk, overlooking the Philly skyline. The city was a grid of lights, breathing, moving. I opened the drawer. Inside was a stack of letters. Not from Tyler. He had written once, a jailhouse scrawl, begging for commissary money. I burned it. These letters were from Noah, Emily's son. My grandson. He was 7. "Dear Grandpa, Mom says you're a hero. Did you really jump out of a boat? Can we go fishing when you come over?" I smiled. A real smile. One that reached my eyes. "Yes, Noah," I whispered to the empty room. "We can go fishing, but we'll stay on the dock." I walked to the window. I touched the glass. It was cold, just like the glass in the ICU waiting room. I thought about Tyler. I thought about him sitting in a cell, 10 feet by 10 feet, paying for his simple math with the rest of his life. I didn't hate him anymore. Hate takes energy. I just felt a profound, quiet sadness. I grieved the boy who fell out of the oak tree. I grieved the young man who graduated college. The man in the cell was a stranger. A stranger who taught me the hardest lesson of all. Blood is biology. Loyalty is a choice. I looked at the city lights. I had lost a son. I had lost the illusion of safety. But I checked my reflection in the dark glass. I was standing straight. My eyes were clear. I was safe. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I was awake. Some stories leave a mark, not because of what was lost, but because of what was found in the ashes. If Bob's journey from the darkness of betrayal to the light of a new dawn struck a chord with you, let us know by liking this story. By subscribing, you're not just joining a channel, you're stepping into a space where the hardest truths are told, and where resilience is always the final word. Stay with us. There are more stories to tell.